some questions somewhere. I'm trying to find them.
That's good.
Bob, let's talk about when you were in the war, in the military.
He wasn't in the war, but
In the military.
Oh,
Well, what were you?
he was a scientist.
In what?
well,
Army,
when I
Navy?
graduated from college, RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic, as a mechanical engineer,
In what year?
1954, and I went to, I got a job with General Motors testing jet engines in Indianapolis, Indiana. And in fact, that was where I got to be able to go to the Indianapolis 500 a couple of times. That was interesting. I remember walking over. They used to have a bridge over the back stretch of the Indianapolis 500, and I was crossing over that bridge when a famous driver, I can't remember his name. It wasn't Bill Vukovich. It was some other driver, but he crashed right underneath me and was killed in the accident. And I just stood there. Well, horrible.
That's a bad story.
Yeah. Huh?
That doesn't make any sense.
What do you mean? He was a race car driver and he crashed. And I was going across the bridge over the track and I looked down and bang. Don't you get that?
Not really, and that's not the kind of thing I want you to tell
Yeah,
him.
news
Well,
story. So,
you
tell
wanted
us
to
about
know.
Did he enlist in the army?
What?
Did you enlist in the army?
No. When I got out of this, when I graduated from college, I had a college deferment. I went to work for General Motors in Indianapolis testing jet engines. And that's when the draft board caught up with me. And they pulled me back and put me in the Army in 1954. And I didn't have to go to Korea, thank God. Because of my engineering degree, they decided that they'd put me down in Maryland, Fredericks, Maryland, where they had a lab that was testing temperatures at high altitudes, and I worked on that, designing the things they'd send up in a balloon. Because in those days they were worried about germ warfare. Well, you had to release the germs at an altitude where they could get enough air to live. And so what I was doing was testing the amount of air at different altitudes.
And that was a real threat at the time?
Oh yeah, the Russians were doing it, so we had no choice. We had to do it. So I got out of that, thank God.
What was it like when Cindy was born?
When was she born?
Cindy.
Oh, Cindy,
Your daughter?
1966.
Okay. When you
Where?
were-
Chris was born in 1961. They're 5 years apart.
Okay, where were they born?
In New Jersey, Somerville Hospital in Somerville, New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay, well, tell about the day that Cindy was born. Was that the hot day?
Yes.
You were working on the roof?
I was on the ladder cleaning the gutters. You know, the leaves would clog the gutters. I was up on the ladder cleaning the gutters, and I got a phone call.
Phone call? You were on the house.
I know, but
You heard it.
somebody, I can't remember who it was.
Fran, your other wife,
My first wife, Fran.
came out and told you, didn't she?
That what?
That she was going into labor.
Yeah. So I had to take her to the hospital. And I'll never forget, there was some woman she shared a room with some other woman, and this other woman was cursing her husband for making her pregnant. It was like their fifth child. Yeah, that was something else. But so where are we? What are we doing?
Yeah,
So-
Marty.
Capturing the moment.
What happened with your first marriage?
What happened
Mm-hmm.
to end it?
Mm-hmm.
My first wife, Fran, she became a little, she got multiple sclerosis. And for some reason, she blamed it on me. She thought I'd given it to her. She's crazy. But, huh?
She thought you caused it.
Yeah, she thought I caused her multiple sclerosis, which I don't know how I could have done that. But anyway, she wanted a divorce, so we got a divorce. That was that.
And then what happened to her after you got divorced?
Well, she lived, in fact, Chris, my son Chris, was very loyal to his mother, and he stayed with her and took care of her. But she had multiple sclerosis, and she finally died from it. I forget the year, but I have to hand it to Chris. He was a good son to her.
Well, they both were.
Huh?
They both were, because when she got really bad,
Yeah.
remember Chris went up and got her and brought her down to Virginia Beach. And she was in that nursing facility.
That's true.
I do
Yeah.
So they could visit her.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. That's what happened.
They were good.
Boy, you're really going back in my memory.
Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. Who was your best friend when you were growing up?
Donnie Kielmeyer was my next door neighbor.
What did you do?
Oh, we flew kites. The big deal then was to make a kite and fly a kite.
You made it yourself?
Yeah. I used brown wrapping paper, and I made a kite that was like 6 feet high. And I had 1,000 feet of string. And I remember once you had to put a tail on the kite to keep it, straight. And the string broke, and the kite fell on the golf course. So I had to go. Donnie and I went to the golf course on our bikes to retrieve the kite.
You got to get it back.
Yeah. Well, we used to go swim. There was a pond on the golf course, and we used to go swimming in that pond, and we'd with our feet we'd feel for the golf balls, because many times the ball would land in the pond, so we'd feel with our feet for the golf balls and take them out and put them in a bucket, and we took them to the golf pro, the pro shop, and he'd give us a buck for a bucket of balls. As long as they did, he said, I don't want any smileys. A smiley was when the guy hit the ball and it made a crease in it. They called that smileys. So he wouldn't take any smileys. They had to all be good balls. Yeah.
How old were you when you did that?
Oh boy, probably 11, 12 years old. Yeah.
What was your first job?
My first job was,
What year?
boy, I don't remember the year,
Well, how old were you?
but I was working. My grandfather got me the job, and it was in Livingston. Was it Livingston? I think it was Livingston. But it was about a half-hour bike ride from where I lived in Bexley, Ohio. And my job was they made wooden children's furniture, like gliders, all these wooden parts had to be painted. So what they would do is I'd put the wooden parts on a rod and dip them in a paint bath and hang it up to dry.
What was your first car, Bob? Your first car?
My first car? Oh, boy.
Your mother bought it for you.
Yeah, it was a 1950 Ford convertible, yellow Ford convertible, 1950. And it burned oil like you wouldn't believe. I remember once I was going back to school, and I stopped at this Russell Sage College for girls and picked up a bunch of girls that had dates up there. And we drove up with the top down, and the girls looked back and they said, "What's all that black smoke back there?" It was burned. My car was burning oil like you wouldn't believe. But I couldn't afford to have it fixed, so I just kept putting oil in it.
How'd you buy that? You bought it brand new?
No.
No.
What?
Sounds like a broken engine.
How did you buy your first car? Like, how did you have the money to even buy your first car?
No, my mother bought it for me.
When he graduated
I see.
from
Yeah, when I
college.
graduated from high school.
So when did you buy your first car yourself? You buy your first car, and what was it?
Oh, it was a Triumph TR3 sports car,
I had a Triumph TR6.
and I traded the Ford, the '50 Ford, in for that. And I'll never forget, the Ford burned so much oil that when I came into the dealer, I didn't want him to see how much oil it was burning. And the dealer happened to be down on the bottom of a slope, and so I turned the engine off and coasted down so he wouldn't see the smoke. But yeah, that was a fun car, that TR3.
When you drove, when you moved from New Jersey to Virginia Beach, did you drive?
Yeah,
So you drove with Cindy?
yeah, I drove with
How
Cindy,
old was she?
and I remember we were driving down that long stretch north of the bridge into Virginia Beach.
Shore Drive?
Yeah,
Eastern Shore.
yeah, from the eastern shore down, there was a big long bridge there, and
Bay Bridge Tunnel.
but we were going down toward that bridge, and this dog came running across, and we hit it. And I hit the dog and kept on going, and Cindy said, "Oh, we got to go back. We got to go back." So I made a U-turn and came back, but we never did find that dog. It must have.
Good.
How old was Cindy when you came down? 10?
No, she was 12
Maybe
or
10 or
13.
10 or 12, maybe 13. Yeah, she was a teenager.
That's a big change at that time of life. And she just was cool with moving to Virginia Beach?
Yeah.
Well, she wanted to move.
She wanted to get out of there? And Chris stayed.
She what? I'm sorry.
Stop, Marty. And Chris stayed.
Chris stayed with his mother. Like I said, he was real loyal.
So he was older, like.
Yeah.
So he was already like 18.
Yeah, he was 18. Right. Yeah.
Well, what was your favorite grandparent?
Oh, my grandfather, Penny Penrose.
Penny, we already talked about
Oh.
Penny too.
Ivaloo.
Who?
Ivaloo, your grandmother.
Oh, my grandmother. She was a saint. In fact, she was my moral compass, because I used to spend a lot of time with her because she was so wise. She was a very wise woman and very gentle and kind. And I'd leave school, grade school, and go visit her and sit on her porch, and she'd tell me all these stories and stuff. And she was really my my moral compass. Yeah.
And where was that exactly? In what state?
Bexley, Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah, it's a little town east of Columbus. In fact, it's within the city limits of Columbus, but it's a separate borough, you know. Yeah.
What was it like there? What was her house like?
Oh,
Like,
it
can
was
you remember
she had a house. It was one of those Sears houses. Sears Roebuck used to sell houses to people,
We stayed in one.
and she had a Sears house. Yeah.
Did she cook for you?
Yeah, she made lunch. She made
What
lunch
was
for
your-
me.
What was your favorite meal that she made you?
The most favorite thing she ever made for me was angel food cake. Oh my God. That cake would almost float off the table. It was
So she made it from
angel
scratch.
food cake. She'd use a dozen eggs to make one cake. My father worked for a company called Columbus Coated Fabrics. They made what was called linoleum. And it was like for tablecloths. It was cloth, but it had a
Oilcloth.
oil. It was called oilcloth. And a lot of the tablecloths had the checkered red and white checkers on it. And that's what he did. He worked for that company as a salesman.
Like door to door?
Yeah, no,
No.
He traveled a lot to all over the country to department stores to sell them on the idea of using Columbus coded product.
Tell why, Bob. Tell why people were changing to oilcloth from.
Oh well, oilcloth was great during the Depression. You didn't have all you had to do was wipe it with a rag,
Well,
and whereas a regular cloth, tablecloth, you'd have to wash it or send it to the dry cleaners or something.
What year was the Depression? What year did the Depression start?
It was like 28, wasn't it?
Well, you're in
1932, I think, 1932.
29.
29, you're right. That's when the Depression
So
started,
you
in
were
29.
born
She's
in
right.
what year is Bob born again?
The stock market just went,
So he was born in the very. So you were born in the very height of the very beginning.
the beginning,
And
1930.
it went until how long was the Great Depression?
It lasted until World War II.
Which is
Now, that's when Roosevelt first became president in 1932. And he had all these giveaway programs. So you could argue that it was not the right thing to do, but he started the CCC, which is a Civilian Conservation Corps, and the government would hire kids to repair bridges and roads and stuff like that, and the government paid them for it. And that's how he got jobs for people, off of the government money. He was criticized for that. Of course, the Republicans hated him.
do you feel like the Depression
Yeah.
shaped you as because you were
You know, that's interesting because all that money he spent on those programs didn't solve the Depression. The Depression wasn't over until World War II. And of course, when World War II started, all the people worked for industry to make guns and tanks and, I don't know, airplanes, whatever. That's the World War II is what got us out of the Depression. So,
But so what? How old were you when the Depression ended? Like
He's like,
10 years old.
10. So that really you were. I mean, to grow up
Yeah,
until 10 years old.
yeah.
What was it like every day living in the Depression? What it like?
did your parents have money?
I can remember
They never.
a friend of my mother's had a children's clothing store in Columbus, and so she always gave me the fanciest clothes. And I remember one time we were in the market. They had a market downtown Columbus, and I was walking in this white shorts and white fancy, and this bum was sitting by the side of the road, and he says, "Hey, Sonny, I got a rotten tomato. Give me a dime or I'm going to throw it on your clothes." So I gave him a dime.